It's probably not a strategy I actually developed to overcome because I never really encountered it here. I started here at Valero 6 years after I got out of law school, so I'd been practicing in a law firm up in Fort Worth. There weren't a lot of women around, but the women I worked with and the guys I worked with, it didn't seem to matter. There's not a gender issue. And then when I got to Valero, not surprisingly, there weren't a lot of women there, but it really wasn't a barrier in that sense. But I spent 15 years pretty much in the male's world. And I think some of the same strategies that any of us would use in any environment is just figuring out how to fit in. So you can figure out when you're talking to somebody who's comfortable talking about your kids, and you can figure out when you're talking to somebody who's not comfortable talking about the kids, and just being perceptive to comfort zones for conversation. So some guys, all they want to do is talk about sports, and I just shake my head and say, sure, that's interesting, like LeBron. Those kinds of, and you can pretty quickly in a conversation figure out where people lie in that spectrum of how personal the conversation needs to become. I had my youngest child when I was at Valero, and we were in the middle of all these transactions. So I left maternity leave early to come back, and I was still nursing him. So I carried my little breast pump with me and my little cooler bag on the company plane week after week. And the guy that I traveled with was single, no kids, never once, the entire time I was pregnant, never once asked about the pregnancy because that wasn't his comfort zone. So I just never said anything, I carried it on, he didn't ask, but I didn't need to talk about it because I knew it wasn't going to make him comfortable in that space. But the flip side is, as a woman, I think I actually got probably more entree into some rooms because I wasn't a threat. It was more, especially the engineers loved to take me to the plants and show me around and teach me things, and being a female and a lawyer, I kind of didn't fit their mold of what they expected to be coming onto their property anyway. So in some ways, I think there's, and I've told women groups this before, I think we actually have an advantage because we don't have the same. This is universal, and I realize it's not true for every person, but just a different ego set. So when I walk into a room, I don't really care if anyone notices me. I just want to get the work done and make everyone at the end of the day feel good about it. And it's just a little different approach. So. I've really not had much of an issue with that either. So, transitioning to this role, I was new for retail, so probably more the conversation, not necessarily because I'm a woman, but because I came from a non-retail field to run retail, and so the conversations have been more around that as opposed to my gender, but more my background. I don't have many. So it's typically pretty supportive. Okay. So the Business Journal article that just came out, I think I've gotten 4 emails in the last 24 hours from women friends across town saying, hey, great article. And so I think for the most part, women tend to be pretty supportive of each other. And especially as you get to places where there's not many of us, it's you almost have to. Over my career at Valero, I was given the opportunity to do a lot of different things. And so when, I just had a number of people that believed in me and gave me more than I thought I could take on. But every time they said, would you like to do X, I'd say, sure. And so just kind of growing into that role. A few years ago, I was asked to go to Stanford for a 6-week executive management program. And it was probably one of those, defining moments is a little overstated, but one of those time periods where I had some time to reflect about what I could do to bring to the table, where I needed to grow still, but what skill sets I had that were actually probably not being fully utilized. And coming out of that, I remember having the conversation with my old boss, said, Kim, what do you think? Do you think you could be CEO sometime? And I before I'd gone to Stanford, I would never have said yes. Coming out of that, I said, I think I probably could. And it was one of those realizations of I had more to offer than I was tapping into. And some of it's just instinctive, people issues and how to deal with folks, and really more, the CEO tends to be more the motivational leader. Folks like Hal and everybody else really are leading execution. CEO's role is more to help shape strategy and motivate people to execute. So the people piece really came through. Late 90s, early 2000, I joined the board of Family Service Association, which is one of San Antonio's largest and oldest nonprofits. Served on that board for 7 years, and really my first year I thought, what am I doing here? You know, there's all these leaders in the community on the board. I'd never been on a board before, but it was a great place to learn leadership skills in a more safe environment, because they need you, they need volunteer leaders, and you can get to work on building your leadership skills, building your consensus building skills, all of those things in an environment that doesn't have the impact to your salary, you know, so you can work on things that will help you back at work as well, at the same time give back. So I started off in family service when I was fairly new at Valero. Valero is a great supporter for community involvement. Grew, and my last 2 years on the board, I was chairman of the board, and we went from like 3 million to 20 plus million budgets in the time period I was there. So they've got a terrific CEO. But I learned a whole lot along the way, and then kind of towards the tail end of my 7 years on the board, I was asked to help out at United Way and volunteer over there. At the time, United Way had just done a community-wide survey to ask folks, what do you think are the most burning issues in our communities today? And they prioritized them, and they ended up with things for individual success, children's success, and family success. So they asked me to chair an issue council focused on the children's success piece. So we spent a lot of time, and unfortunately I had an employer that was encouraging me to do it, because I was out of the office quite a bit doing this stuff. But a lot of time getting to understand some of the conditions of kids in our community, particularly we focused on the west side. And really the 0 to 5 kid gap before they got into the formal school education system. Got to meet a lot of folks through that process. So we met a lot of educators, we met a lot of nonprofit leaders, talked to child psychologists, talked to parents, and then started putting programs in place. And I ran that issue council for several years until I was asked to take the leadership role for the entire piece. So what's now called the Partnership for Community Change Coordinating Council, which is really just a fancy name for the committee under our overall United Way that oversees all funding in the community. So all traditional programs come through me, or come through my committee, not through me, through the committee. All of our issue council work, and then a lot of our grant work does as well, and safety net. So food bank and shelters and those sorts of things get the funding through our group. So. And I've been doing that for a number of years now, and it's been a great experience. So in terms of public speaking and all of those things, I used to be pretty gun shy about that sort of thing when I first came to Valero in particular, probably really till about 8 years ago, and it took one, I'm now forced to do it, and with my new job in particular, but even with United Way, I ended up every month giving a presentation to a room full of community leaders about where we were. So I got more and more comfortable in that space. So the volunteering makes you feel good because you're doing something to help improve the community, but it's also helping improve yourself. And so for me, that's particularly true. It was built some really great friendships too in that way. I'm not so much in some of the women's groups. I mean, I'm affiliated with them, but really it's more, for me, the community piece has been a bigger driver. So. I don't know that you can separate those. They're all just sort of melded together, It just is, you can't have, in my case, I can't have one without the other. So balancing out the two is always a challenge, right? So I've described it as, when you think about someone balancing on a balance beam, they're never straight up and down. They're always trying to catch their balance, and it's just, I said it in an article recently, it's wobbling, but it is that. I mean, in my mind, when I think about people asking how do you balance work and home life, I think about someone walking down that balance beam, and they're constantly with their arms out, trying to figure out how to make it work each step they take, and that's what it takes, is just adjusting and giving yourself some room to make mistakes and not do everything 100% at home all the time. And but it takes some time to get to that point where you're comfortable not making everything work, and then you don't sleep as much either. So. Well, there is no substitute for hard work. So work is hard by definition, and so coming to work every day and doing your absolute best is a key piece of it, and making yourself available. So not being afraid to take on new responsibilities, and then looking for things that you could do to help out too. I think that's where folks, and I, over the years I've had a number of folks come through my organization. Some that do really well because they see things that need to get done and go take care of them, and others that kind of wait to be told what to do. And it's the former that are going to be the successful ones. I mean, you need all kinds of workers at the office, but the ones that really look to say, okay, well, this is my job description, but hey, I see something over here that I can help with, let me help with it, and reach out and help. The folks who kind of stick to their little box and get indignant when they step out of it, or asked to step out of it, probably aren't going to be successful. So, and I tell my girls all the time, so both of them they're 20 and 17, and they're always looking for things that, if they have an opportunity to take on a leadership role, they ought to take it on, because someone needs to do it. And I think one of the things that I have learned over the years, and I wish I'd known when I was 17, is when I walk into a room, everyone's as unsure as I am. And if you can kind of take that and say, it's okay for me to feel uncertain about this, because no one else in this room feels any better than I do. And then it sort of equalizes the playing field, and you can just get going. And so I try to tell my girls that a lot. It's okay if you're nervous when you stand up in front of a crowd. They're all going to be nervous too, so don't worry about it. So it's normal, Especially when, if you're stretching yourself, you should feel uncertain about it. But if you're not stretching, it means it's too easy. So. Well, clearly, we talk about growth on all fronts. So our base plan includes, we have 1,041 stores in the U.S. We're adding 30 new stores to the U.S. network next year, another 8 up in Canada. And right now, we're predicting kind of that level of growth year after year. But as I said a few minutes ago, you don't need the leadership team to make that happen. So our job is really to both increase our new store builds, get the resources we need to do that, but then make our legacy stores more successful, both in terms of that employee engagement, customer engagement piece, but also selling more things inside our stores. So we're doing that through merchandising initiatives, food initiatives, trying to make sure we're going to go out and talk to our legacy store customers to say, what more could we do for you? I would love it if my dry cleaner came to my corner store once a week. It's between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night, so I could pick my clothes up on my time. Those kinds of, what other offerings can we do to our loyal customer base in each little corner, and how do we grow that? So we have a number of initiatives that we'll be working on this coming year that will really try to increase not just the number of our stores, but really how much our stores sell. And our focus really would be to continue to grow our customer base. So we serve about 500 million customers a year right now, and our base plan has us growing that to about 600 million customers in 5 years. I really want to see that go much higher than that. So and focus on everybody in the organization about growing our customers and delighting those customers more and more every day. So. Well, I certainly hope to still be here. So clearly would love to look back and have the store count be significantly higher than what we're planning it right now, with lots of success and lots of employees moving up in the organization as well. We have an opportunity. Fortunately, the leadership team is fairly young, but succession planning starts now. So really working on leadership development for the next layer, so that 5 years, 10 years down the road, any one of us could go and there's someone to take that spot that makes sense and make shareholders happy and employees happy as well.